Can-Am connection, fluent and chill. What's going on, Jay? How you doing, man?
Can-Am. I like that. I do like that.
I stole it from wrestling, but I like it. So we've got, every show's a great show. I feel like I say it every time, but it's true. It's true. We got mail drop, 3 really good questions from our listeners and viewers. We're going to talk about Demar Derozan, MVP.
I don't know why I was fighting it for a while, and not fighting it, Tone. I was more poo-pooing it, like, yeah, but it was it's one of those conversations that now must have to.
We have to have it. We have to
have this conversation.
Every week we've been talking about. We've done the quarterbacks. We've done wide receivers. Now we're going to do the top 5 free agent running backs and where they should land.
Ball carriers.
But we're going to start. There's a conspiracy. And we do a conspiracy, every single week between our 3 shows, 1 episode of the 3 a week. We always do a conspiracy. We've done, listen, just to recap, we've done Jordan's flu game. We've done Jordan's first retirement. We've done, did a man really land on the moon? Is the earth flat? We've done a lot of conspiracies. I think actually we did, too, the frozen envelope, Patrick Ewing and the Knicks. All of those ones and more, and we're going to continue to do more. But all of them have one thing in common. We've all heard of these conspiracies before. We've had conversations. We've seen information. The Wilt 100, that's another good one that we've done.
That's a really good one.
So here's the thing about this one. We talked about it last week almost as I kind of just threw it out there in the sense that Juwan Howard was suspended after kind of that, after the game, they're doing the line, and he didn't like a timeout that in a blow that was called, and he reacted and swung. And I brought up, it probably has PTSD from
Chris Webber.
From Chris Webber in the NCAA finals against North Carolina when he calls a timeout that they didn't have, cost him the game. And the reason I bring that up is I'd never heard this conspiracy before. So all those other ones we've talked about, we've heard about. That one, this one, was sparked by my comment about he has PTSD from timeout. And someone said, hey, it's not just PTSD. There's a conspiracy there that you guys should talk about. And I said, whoa.
What kind of conspiracy?
What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
Chris Webber threw that game on purpose. Here's one of the best college basketball players, maybe ever, but at least in Michigan, obviously. Athletic and intelligent. Listen to the way he speaks. He's not a dumb guy. He's a smart guy. He knows basketball. He's on his way to the NBA. And he threw the game on purpose. I said, why? Why would that happen? So before I go into the details of the why, let me ask you, because we get comments that I do too much talking, so I'm gonna stop for a little bit. What about you? Have you heard of this conspiracy?
Never heard of this.
What are your thoughts initially?
Before you bring this to me, this has never been anything like this that has crossed my mind, because they was in the national championship the year before and they got smacked real good by Duke. So the consensus was the whole crew was coming back the next year. This was before the one and dones. The whole crew was coming back the next year, and everybody thought, okay, Michigan's winning it this year. They got their whole crew back. They was in the national championship. They're better. And Chris Webber is unanimously the best player in the country. So it's not a question of whether or not there's this guy, because there was a time where you can have an argument that, Jamal Mashburn might be this guy, or Hardaway, or there was other guys in the conversation, Tone, but for the most part, Chris Webber was the best player in the country. So they had the best player in the country. They had their entire 5 coming back the next season. Michigan was considered the best team in the country. They had a dogfight in the NCAA tournament where they had some really tough games, but I was convinced that they were winning it. So the idea that he's going to throw it, I'm very interested to hear the logic on this.
All right. So for those that don't know, we're talking about the Fab Five, right? 5 freshman starters. I don't think it was done before. I don't think it's been done since. So let's talk about it. So here's the background. If I'm going to say a name, tell me if you've heard this name. Ed Martin.
I do. Ed Martin. That was Webber's guy. Weber
and Jalen Rose were getting money and gifts and stuff from Ed Martin. In fact, afterwards, right, Chris Webber lied and was found guilty of perjury, that he did lie, that he was accepting cash and whatever, him and Jalen, from Chris Webber. And we know that's a big no-no back then.
Jalen didn't lie, though.
Jalen didn't lie. Yes, Jalen didn't lie, but they were both getting money.
Big money Ed was what Jalen Rose called him.
Big money Ed. Now, they could have, today, they probably just signed an NIL deal with him. However, back then, you couldn't take money, gifts, that sort of thing. So Ed Martin's giving money to Chris Webber and Jalen Rose while Webber's a student at the University of Michigan. We know that that's a no-no. Webber, actually, apparently, Webber was even getting money. Detroit County Day, the school he went to, Country Day, excuse me, the high school. Apparently, he knows Ed Martin from then. So he knows this guy, Ed Martin. Ed Martin's giving him money. Martin runs, if you don't know, an illegal gambling racket. Okay. He's also an employee at Ford. I don't know that that's relevant. However,
it is relevant.
I'm going through the bullet points.
That's relevant. The reason why that's relevant, because that's the cover. So I'm a drug dealer, and I got a day job, but my real money's coming from drug dealing. So that's the cover. So to your point that they're all coming back, the next year, Webber was already planning to declare for the 1992-93 NBA draft. We know that Webber was one of the best college athletes of all time, physical, mental. I mentioned that already. So here's what we know so far. So Ed Martin has his day job at Ford as his cover. He's running an illegal gambling racket. He's paying off Jalen Rose and Chris Webber. Chris Webber apparently since high school, so even before the college days. Okay. Ed Martin had a lot of money tied into this game. Who was the heavy favorite to win that game? Michigan. So if I were to put a huge bet on UNC, I'd probably get a really big payday, wouldn't I? You would. So now if I've got Webber basically under my thumb a little bit because I've been giving him money. We all know that's a no-no, but he's going to the NBA draft. I'm going to lose my guy now. I don't have Chris Webber anymore. He's going to the NBA. I need one last big payday. So he says to Webber, you're going to lose this game. I'm going to bet big on UNC. I'm going to get my one big, or I'm going to go tell the NCAA, your school, whoever will listen about what's been going on. That's going to ruin your college. They're going to take away all your stats. Like, you know, the ramifications back then. Players were very scared of that happening. So let me pause there for a second. Now, do you see that there's a possibility, or do you want more? No, I think that there's a possibility with that right there, but I don't think that's enough. And the reason why I don't think that's enough is simply because why are we just doing it with the NCAA championship? If this was going on in the NCAA championship, this had to have been going on throughout the season. You can't just come to me at the end of the season and say, I need you to throw a game. Of all the games that I've played and of all the games that I've played and all the games we won and lost and all the money that could have been potentially made, you come to me at the end of the season, the most important game, and say, yo, you got to throw this game or I'm going to the NCAA. No. How do we know? I guess we got to go back and look. It might not have been throwing games, but there could have been point shaving, which was very common. So here's the scenario. There's 20 seconds left. It's the final game, right? Webber has a chance to directly influence the outcome. Michigan has no timeouts left. Pat Sullivan misses his second free throw with 20 seconds to play. Webber appears. I don't know if you remember the clip, but he appears to call a timeout, but the ref doesn't see him. He then travels. We all saw that, but the ref doesn't see that either. So what does he do? Well, he starts dribbling down the court. Well, where does he dribble? To his bench. Straight into the corner, into a double team, into a trap, where some say Michael Talley, if you watch the video, is telling him to call a timeout. Some say he's part of this. He's in this. He was also one of Ed Martin's guys, apparently, who's telling him to call a timeout. So what does he do? He turns, calls his timeout. No timeouts, technical foul. North Carolina wins. Listen, we could go through probably an hour of this, and I gave you kind of the short version because
I want to hear your thoughts. So let me just kind of break it down again. Chris Webber is taking money from Ed Martin since high school illegally. We know that's a fact. We know that he went and testified and lied that he was doing it. So no offense to Chris Webber, we know that he's a liar. At least in that particular case, he was found guilty of doing that, of perjury. We know that Ed Martin obviously had an illegal gambling ring. We know that. All this stuff so far is fact.
This is speculation. This is not speculation. This is fact.
None of this is speculation. This is all fact. We know that Chris Webber was going to go into the draft, which he did in the 92-93 season. So Ed Martin was now going to lose his guy. If he was, we don't know. Was he point shaving? Was he doing all that? But we know this. If you've got a player of Chris Webber's caliber kind of in your crew, you get a lot of benefits in other ways too, right?
Correct.
So that's the only thing we don't know if he was point shaving. We know for a fact Michigan was the heavy favorite in Vegas. And if I'm running an illegal gambling ring and I have an opportunity, even if it is just one game, I have an opportunity to get the outcome of the national title game where a team that I can influence is the heavy favorite. Is it beyond the realm of possibilities that an unscrupulous man who has an illegal gambling ring and influence a game to get one big payday?
And during that time, the NCAA tournament was a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal now.
It's still now, but
But it was a big deal back then. Not only was it a big deal, it was a big deal because guys stayed in school. Guys didn't just come right out of school. It wasn't one and done. Even though Chris Webber did 2 years, guys stayed in school. So the competition level was higher. Now, here's my rebuttal to this. Well, number one, Chris Webber calling the timeout. That wasn't an aberration. Well, what do you mean that wasn't an aberration? Well, we saw Chris Webber in the pros when things got serious and things got tight. He folded. That's who he is.
But was that a creation of what happened that day?
Well, Chris Webber said, this was in high school. He said, I have succumbed to the pressure in the past. That's been my biggest problem. So right then and there, that tells me it doesn't tell me one of two things. It tells me one thing. He can't handle it. So we'll start there.
Or I got to pause you. Or does it tell you that he's been on the take multiple times and that's his cover?
No, Tone, because if he was on the take, then he would have gave it up already. If you can't handle it, absolutely. If you can't handle it, he would have gave it up already. Okay. Him getting that rebound, which I'm looking at it right now. Him getting that rebound and dribbling to the sideline. Tone, he looked like a deer in headlights. He couldn't get that ball away from him fast enough. That's number one. Number two, Tone, I'd like for you to take out your time machine and rewind the clock back to 1982. Georgetown is going against North Carolina, who is also in the national championship at that time. All right. Michael Jordan just cashes an 18-footer to put them ahead. They got downtown Freddie Brown as their point guard. Freddie Brown's coming up, and we're going to get a score because we got to score too. They just scored. We got to score. So what does downtown Freddie Brown do? He throws the ball to James Worthy.
For those that don't know, James Worthy was on North Carolina.
He does not play for Georgetown.
He does not play for Georgetown.
No, he doesn't. He just, and he doesn't throw the ball to James Worthy like he got trapped or something like that, and James Worthy just stepped in. No, James Worthy is standing behind him. He thought James was with Georgetown, turned around, and threw him the basketball, which means to me, New Orleans is one of those places where there's supernatural energy going on. So maybe, possibly, we may have had a reoccurrence of what happened in 82 in 1993.
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to say he saw a ghost of a Georgetown player.
It might. That's not ridiculous neither, Tone. We might have something like that going on. Now, I will say this, that I'm not buying the logic of Chris Webber being bought, because we would have heard about that. I was over 30. We're talking almost 30 years ago. If he was bought, we would have heard about it, because we heard about Mr. Stephen Headache Smith, that he got bought when he was at Arizona State. We found out about that. So that's not something, and especially University of Michigan is not only a big time program, they were marching through the tournament those 2 years. They had one of the best runs, 2 year runs in the history of any program. So if that was going on, I think we would have been heard about that. Absolutely.
Well, but we're talking about a guy who, well, Ed Martin's not going to say anything because he got the big payday from it.
Correct.
Chris Webber's not going to say anything because we know he'll lie on the stand.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but with that being said, Tone, we don't need him to say anything. You have enough people who can dig deep to find out where this is coming from. And you know this is just as well as I do, Tone. When you got something like that going on, what's the first thing? What's the cardinal rule? Follow the money. Follow the money. And
right.
if that was going on, follow the money, and we would have found out exactly who was doing this. And there was no evidence that was going on. So
okay.
I'm more inclined.
Give me your 1 out of 10. 1 being no way, 10 being yep, it absolutely happened.
1.
So no chance, no way, no how.
Because there would have been some. Tone, this is the first time in almost 30 years that I've heard anything like this. So you're the first person to bring.
I'm bringing it to you because it was the first time anyone's ever brought it to me too.
I never even thought about the idea of him skimming. Never.
So I read it, and here's my thing. Here's my theory based on 1. I've never heard of it. I never thought of it. I just thought, here's a guy who got flustered. I agree with you. When he got that rebound, he looked like, oh, I need to get this ball out of my hands as quickly as I possibly can. And just like, just let me call a timeout. Oh, there's no time. Okay, he didn't see it. Okay, I'm just gonna dribble. Where? Timeout.
Tone, you've been on the bench before, and we in the meat and potatoes of the game. What's one of the first things the coach says on the bench if we don't have any timeouts?
Well, we tell, hey, we got no timeouts. We got no timeouts. No timeouts.
That's made clear before we even go into anything.
But I will say this. That's why. But that's my point. You just made my point for me a little bit. Yes, absolutely. A good coach will should tell you, hey, we got no timeouts left. Or hey, when we get out there, don't forget to foul. If we miss the ball, they tell you that instruction, whatever it needs to happen. That doesn't mean you always know. I remember a game where Kobe, I think, is guarding someone in the deep wing, and he's screaming at his players, foul, foul, foul. We have to stop the clock, and he has to run from the deep corner. You remember it? Up to the top of the key. I think Vooch was covering him or something.
No, Jeremy Lin was covering him.
Jeremy Lin, right. And he has to run up and foul him himself. And he's just like, guys, come on. So guys do have moments like that. So here's my theory based on everything that was sent to me. And it was like articles and facts that were said to me. Like I said, I gave you like this much that I received, which is awesome. Thank you. So here's the thing. Here's my theory. I think Ed Martin, Chris Webber, listen, they know each other from the neighborhood. Chris Webber's coming up. He's clearly a phenomenal basketball player. Ed's like, yo, man, a lot of people do this. Like, I think everyone who's been any good at any sport has had someone who'd be like, yeah, let's hang out. Let me buy you dinner. Let me do that. I think that's happened to everybody.
Right.
So I think this is happening. He may or may not. He knows what Ed does. Let's be honest on the side. But that's not news. Like, listen, I think all of us, let's not maybe admit too much, but I think all of us have friends or know people who aren't the most straight up individuals.
They on the up and up. I can get with that.
Okay. So he's like, hey, that's his business. I'm not getting involved in that. He's giving me stuff, whatever. But if I'm Ed Martin, so I'm gonna put that mentality on. Maybe he's never. So I don't believe he's skimmed or point shaved throughout his career. I don't believe. I'm going to give it a 6. Let me give you the answer first. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And here's why I think it might be possible. Because I think Ed Martin was probably smart enough. If he's running an illegal gambling ring, people want to say he's stupid. Nah, if you're doing stuff like that, you're not dumb. You're not putting your brains in the right direction. But you're not a dumb person. Smart enough to know, hey, I can get a big payday out of this. I'm going to put a bunch of money on UNC. Chris, this is what I need you to do. If you don't, you know the type of guy I am. Mm-hmm. You know the type of people I roll with. Mm-hmm. You're going to be in trouble. Your family's going to be in trouble. Sorry, I think that's I think to say that's no way that happened. I don't know. I think that's a little naive. I think we know that stuff has happened. So could it happen? All I'm saying is, could it happen? I would say yes, it could. And the way Chris Webber reacted after, everyone wants to say, "Oh my God, he cost the team and he was crying." I could it be that he felt so guilty that he did it on purpose? That maybe that's why,
or maybe Tone, he just felt like he did because I cost us the game.
Maybe
that's why.
Maybe so. That's why I'm giving it like that middle of the road. Maybe.
And I'm also thinking, if it's very difficult for me to come to you and say, hey, Tone, I need to borrow $100,000. Well, we have to get up to that. So, hey, Tone, can I borrow $100? Give you $100 back. Hey, Tone, can I borrow $1,000? Give you the $1,000 back. Hey, Tone, can I borrow $10,000? I give you $10,000 back. We have to get up to that, as opposed to I'm going to go right to you and go, Tone, I need to borrow $500,000. But I'm not good for that.
He could, but listen, we don't know. He was giving him money, buying him gifts, doing this. It could have been a little bit, and he's like, no, I won't do that. A little bit, no, I won't do that. Hey, Chris, this is your last game. You owe me. And if you don't.
It wasn't just that, though. It wasn't just Weber, Tone. You do know Jalen Rose said he was giving him dough. So if he was giving it to Jalen Rose, that means that he was giving it to other guys, too. It wasn't just those two.
We don't know. Did he give Jalen that same opportunity? But Weber was the one that got the.
And knowing Jalen, if that was going on, it would have came up already. I'm pretty.
That's the thing about Jalen. He's the type that would have spilled the beans. I agree with you on that one.
Definitely giving it up. So I'm on the one.
You're on the one. I'm on that teeter of that 5-6. Like I don't believe it, but I could see how you could make that case. Right. So let us know what you think. Did Chris Webber just have a bonehead moment and called 2 timeouts and traveled in 5 seconds? Or did he purposely try to lose that game for his guy? All right. Now we're going to switch to the NFL. Speaking of running, speaking of traveling, like he looked like a football player, just run down the court. Here's our top 5. I'm going to start. I'll just start with number 1. Let me know where you think. I got to say this right off the bat. I think the free agent running back class is a little iffy this season. So if you need a running back, you might. I don't know. I'm a little worried about free agency. So here we go. Number 1, Leonard Fournette.
Leonard Fournette. I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have gotten what they're going to get out of him. I think he's still got some good years left in him, and I do think that he's an NFC running back. A good place for him to be, with that being said, is Tennessee. I'm sorry, not Tennessee. It's Tampa, not Tennessee. I'm sorry. Tennessee, they already straight with it.
They're good.
Is a good place for them to be is Tampa. Even though they've gotten everything that they're going to get out of him. You saw what happened in Jacksonville. I saw what happened when he got to Tampa. I think that they're going to shore up their quarterback situation, and I think
they're going to run it back. So let's not. People think Fournette's old. Fournette's 27 years old.
That's it.
He had 180 carries last year, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns, 69 catches for 454 yards and 2 touchdowns. 2 years, $13 million is the projected. So you think he stays in Tampa?
I think he stays in Tampa.
You know, it's unfortunate. You know, I hate this. You know, the rich keep getting richer, but you know where you would make sense. They just don't have the cap room to make it happen. Also in the NFC, they just won the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like he'd be that type of guy.
Yeah.
To help, because if they had a little bit of better of a running game, I know Cam Akers started with the injuries, but the Rams made sense. But yeah. I'm kind of with you. I don't think we're going to see, because I'm trying to think where else could he go. And I don't see who's going to give, because there's no more featured backs, right? So to take a chance, I'm like, are you getting the Tampa Bay guy? Are you getting the Jacksonville guy? Like,
with that being said, Tone, him being in, with the exception, whatever Russell Wilson is doing, he'd be really good in Seattle, because now that gives them a completely different dynamic that they didn't have.
Seattle might be a good one too. Actually, that's a good idea. All right. Number 2, and this one, you know, he's been on a couple of teams who just didn't know how to use him, but man, Cordaro Patterson had a year in Atlanta, but for running backs, he's on that, although he's a running back, wide receiver, we don't really know kind of where to classify him. He's on that wrong side of 30. So he's 31. He had 153 carries for 618 yards, 6 touchdowns, 52 catches, 548 yards. So he has about 1,200 all-purpose yards, or 1,150, whatever it is, and 5 TDs catching. He was really the heart and soul of that Atlanta Falcons offense.
Still really good.
What do we think?
Still really good. Well, there's not a huge market for a guy on the other side of 30 on a bad team. Now, he could end up playing for a different team like Pittsburgh. I think that he could help them in terms of being a third down back. To be honest with you, Tone, I remember Corey Dillon went to New England. That's kind of giving me those vibes where, Cordell Patterson, I think Belichick could help him. He could help Belichick being the kind of player that he is, a third down back, getting out in the flat. I think that he could help New England. I think that he could help them out tremendously. So I think there is some market for him now. And on top of that, I think that in New England, he would come for cheap because, we're not looking at a guy that's, a 4-year, $50 million deal, $26 million guaranteed. No, I think
the projection is 1 year, $10 million.
Yeah.
And so I'm, my first thought is Atlanta needs to keep him because he was the only consistent thing. They still don't, Calvin Ridley, we don't know what's going on there. Kyle Pitts is a second-year tight end, but Matt Ryan's still your quarterback. I don't know what they're doing in Atlanta, to be honest.
Don't have a quarterback situation.
But if I'm Cordaro Patterson and I get a call from Bill Belichick and says, "Hey, here's a 1 year, $8 million deal, $9 million deal. You're going to kind of be our featured back because I want to use you in creative ways." I'm taking that call. So yeah, I like that one.
And they're a playoff team too.
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, where was he? Minnesota, Chicago, Atlanta. Like, I think he'd like a chance to win. Melvin Gordon on the right side of 30, 29.
I love Melvin Gordon, man.
People either love Melvin Gordon or hate Melvin Gordon.
I love him, yo.
So last season, 203 carries, 918 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was like the quietest 900-yard rushing season, I think, ever in the history of football. 28 catches, 213 yards for 2 more touchdowns. So 10 touchdowns total. Is he, but they have Javonte Williams there in Denver. Is this something that he sticks around to be that kind of 1-2 punch? Now this is project. Look, I'm just using these ESPN projections, right? We don't know.
Right.
1 year, $5 million.
1 year, 5. So a team where he could just get on the crew for that 1 year and push them over the top. We're sending them out to the desert, Tone. I think he's perfect.
Arizona?
I love him in Arizona. Absolutely. 1 year, $5 million. And that team, because I did Connor. Melvin Gordon's a better running back than Connor. From what I see, I think Melvin Gordon is a better running back than Connor. Melvin Gordon reminds me, Tony, you can appreciate this being a Laker fan. He reminds me of Lamar Odom. What do you mean, Lamar Odom? He reminds me of that guy where Lamar Odom will give you something and, Tone, he just leaves you starving. Like, give me more. Give me more. That's who Melvin Gordon is. He's a guy who'll run for 160 yards, and you thinking, yo, this dude gonna be the best running back in the league. And then next week you get 60 yards out of him.
How are you a 7-foot point guard who could dribble, shoot, pass, rebound, defend, drop 30, and now you
left-handed, by the way.
And now 2 points?
Left-handed, by the way. Don't leave that part out. Left-handed, by the way.
And then you do nothing. Yeah.
Melvin Gordon is that guy. He's one of those running backs who's gritty. I think that him being in Arizona for the 1 year, because they right at the doorstep too, Tone. They're not that far away. They're going to get Kyler Murray back, right? Not only are they going to get Kyler Murray back, Hop is going to be ready. AJ Green is going to be ready next season, even though I think AJ Green is washed. But Zach Ertz is going to be better. So to get Melvin Gordon in that rushing attack, oh man, I think that he would be great for them. And he comes cheap too. 1 year, $5 million, absolutely.
I'm in the same division, but not the Cardinals. Let me ask you a question. How many running backs did the 49ers go through last season?
Let's see. We had Elijah Mitchell. 3. I think we went through 3 of them total.
He'd be a nice stable guy in the backfield in San Francisco, wouldn't he?
He would be, and he comes cheap too. That's the most important part, Tone. And he comes cheap. And the way Shanahan's system is run, it's a run-heavy system.
You got it. So here's my thing. I'm making my pitch to Melvin and saying, "Hey, listen, you've had a career that's been kind of up and down. Let's be honest. Here's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the best kind of running scheme to accentuate your positives. I'm going to give you a team that's run first with solid defense. All my running backs rush for 1,000 yards. I don't even care who they are. I need a durable back who's going to be my number one. And then I'm going to have a couple guys kind of backing you up. Absolutely. You don't want to go to Arizona. What's happening with Kyler Murray? He's asking for a contract. There's some issues over there. We got a young quarterback in Trey Lance who's going to be our starter. We need a veteran guy like you to be that go-to guy in those situations.
Who we're going to feature, by the way, in the offense.
Exactly. I think that's a pretty good pitch, and I think that's a good – because let's be honest, the only thing San Francisco has lacked really over the last 2 seasons, because of injuries, mind you, has been consistency defensively and in the running game. Well, here, this might be at least answers one of those things. So I like this.
One of our best running backs was our wide receiver, so stop playing.
Your best running back was your now Debo. Listen, that's not a bad thing. But
that's not terrible. Don't get me wrong. It's not terrible.
All right, number 4. You actually just mentioned him. Is James Conner, who, by the way, why do I feel like James Conner's old? He's 27. I feel like he's been in the league for 10 years.
Well, Arizona. I think he's been in Arizona for his entire career. I don't think he's been.
No, he was Pittsburgh.
He was in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry.
I forgot about Pittsburgh. He took over for Le'Veon Bell.
And that's why.
And he had that first season he took over for Le'Veon Bell. We forgot Bell that fast because of James Conner.
I'll tell you what, Tone. How about we go back to Pittsburgh?
Well, let me give you his stats. So 202 carries last year for 739 yards, 15 touchdowns. He was great on my fantasy team, by the way. He was my flex.
I'm sure you racked up. I'm sure you racked up that. 37 catches, 375 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he's, again, around 1,000 all-purpose yards, 18. Let me say this again, 18 touchdowns. And you think, go back to Pittsburgh? Well,
2 years. Oh, let me give you the project. 2 year, $10 million.
2 years, $10 million.
Well, so just to recap it, right, to put it into perspective, 1 year 10 for Cordarrelle, 1 year 5 for Melvin Gordon, 2 year 10, again, projected.
Right. So him being in Arizona, 2 years, I think they're going to pay Kyler Murray, and I like Melvin Gordon in Arizona.
Okay.
I think that they, especially because I think that's an upgrade, to be honest with you. And I like Connor, but I think Melvin Gordon's a better running back.
I think Melvin Gordon's a better running back. I think James Conner's a better all-around receiver too out of the backfield.
So let's stay in that division, Tone, because the Super Bowl champs need a running back, and for 2 years
but they're over the cap.
They are over the cap. That's not going to work. Nope, that's not going to work. So the Rams are out. So if you look at the NFC East, I think the Giants are going to move off of Saquon Barkley, Tone. I think that they're going to move off of him.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think that they're going to move off of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the market for Connor. That would not surprise me at all.
I am going to throw. Listen, I don't know the salary cap situation for this team, but I'm going to throw one out to you because here's a team that probably had a chance at the AFC Championship last year. They're only going to get better this year in their minds. And one of their kind of question marks all season, although they did play well later on, is the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen with a guy who can run the ball a little bit, catch out of the backfield a little bit, be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more dynamic, right, than Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. I think that over one of those two guys, I think he's an upgrade, and that's kind of that guy, a guy who can get into the end zone, because Josh Allen, as great as he is when he needs to get out and run, you don't want your quarterback doing that. So to have someone who can clearly get into the end zone, right, has a nose for the end zone, as the scouts would say. I think that's a nice addition for the Bills.
And then to add to that, I'll give you one more team where they are run heavy, and I like Connor in Baltimore because I think that he takes the pressure off of Lamar Jackson. I think he gives them a completely different dynamic. And 2 years, $10 million, he comes cheap. Not only does he come cheap, he gives them a dynamic that they didn't have in terms of the running back. And now that means Lamar can throw the ball more than he did in the past. And I think that opens up their offense even more. I think he helps them out tremendously.
The only question mark I have with Baltimore, why I would say maybe they wouldn't sign him, if J.K. Dobbins is back, I think we forget how good he can be when healthy.
Say the last part. Okay.
And that's what I said, when healthy. So maybe that's the insurance policy. You're absolutely right. All right. We're going to stick in Arizona with, I don't know if I want to call him his backup, but the other running back in Arizona, Chase Edmunds, 26, 116 carries, 586 yards, 2 touchdowns, but that's probably because James Conner stole them all. 43 catches, 311 yards. He's all these guys are about $5 million a year. So his projected contract is 3 years, $15 million. So we're looking at about $5 million a year for almost all these guys. Where do we see a guy like Chase Edmunds?
Is Chase a backup or is he a lead ball carrier? That's my question. Is he a guy that I can get a ball to 15, 20 times a game? That's because if he's that guy, then as a young guy, if he's that guy, we could build around him with Daniel Jones and he could be with the Giants. Because Tone, I think that the Giants are going to move off of Saquon Barkley. I don't think they're confident in him being healthy, and I think they're going to move off of him. So for the Giants to look at a guy like that and maybe be a featured back, the question is he a featured back? Baltimore is another team. But your team, which is the most important one that I was thinking about, my quarterback can't be my leading rusher. That can't happen. I need a guy in the backfield who can run the football. So to have a guy like this where we could feature him and giving him the ball 15, 20 times a game, I like it, Tone, in Buffalo.
You like him in Buffalo? Okay.
I like him in Buffalo.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to end up in Arizona. He's going to just stay in Arizona. I think a lot of these guys are going to stay. However, I think Chase is the one that moves. I think him and James Conner. I don't think that's a good. Like, if I want a backfield, I don't think that's a good mix. Like, I want a power back. Like, I really like. I'll give the example, the Packers. I really like what they have in Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. You got kind of the all-purpose back in Jones, and then you got the bruiser in AJ Dillon, like short yardage, third down, goal line. He'll thighs the size of Mack trucks. That's the kind of guy I like to have as my kind of alternate. Or if I have a big bruising back, then I want kind of that scat back, receiving back as the alternate. So I like to have them to be very different type of players.
Well, you can't have that guy anymore, Tone. You can't have the one guy who's just the primary ball carrier, who's just a bruiser, because he's not going to hold up.
Right. But listen, we're all committee backs now for the most part. There's a couple of exceptions, but they're for the most part. So I think Chase Edmunds kind of fits a lot of places, right? Like all the teams we mentioned, like the Seattles, the Buffaloes, Baltimore's. Because I don't think he's a feature back. I don't think he's your number one. I think he's a number two. So I think he can literally go and be the number two anywhere. Like he can go to Tennessee, and I know they like their backup there, but I mean, he can go into Tennessee and back up, and give Derrick Henry a rest. He can literally anywhere. But it depends. Here's the thing that we don't talk about. We always think of scheme, system, those types of things. But where do they want to go? Right? Where's Chase Edmunds from? Does he want to go to a winning franchise? Does he want to go does he want to go to, maybe he wants to go to the Patriots? Be like, hey, I want to win 10, 11 games, right? And and have a chance in the playoffs. Right? Although Arizona's on the step, they made the playoffs this year, but so those are the other things we don't think about. But I think he's the type of back where he's not going to be your featured back. So it literally can go anywhere. So if I have to pick somewhere, I think he stays in Arizona.
Okay.
I think and backs up, whether it's like you said, whether it's Melvin Gordon. Who knows? You keep saying they want to get the Giants want to get rid of Saquon. Well, maybe that's the splash that the Cardinals make from Kyler Murray is here's your paycheck plus we're going to get you a guy who has superstar running back potential and bring in Saquon and have Chase as his back. So there's some opportunities. All right. Is there any other running backs that kind of come to mind that you're like, oh, we didn't talk about, we really should talk about this guy? Like, I don't know, Shoney Michel, Rashard Penny, any of those guys, or we good?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah,
I like Shoney Michel too, and not only do I like him, I think he stays in New England. I don't think he moves.
Los Angeles.
He used to be. He wasn't.
He wasn't doing. Yeah. I do that all the time.
I do.
So all right. So those are our 5 running back. Let us know if there's a running back we missed that you want to know, or if you disagree with any of our top 5 running backs, where they should go. We're going to head back to basketball, but this time not college. We're going to drop to the NBA. And I got to start off by saying, you wanted to talk about this guy, and rightfully so. But I watched him get drafted, grow in the NBA, grow as a player, saw his strengths, saw his weaknesses, shed a tear when he got traded. but understood why when he got traded to San Antonio from his beloved Toronto Raptors. One of the few players who's like Toronto, like an LA Compton kid coming to Toronto, saying, "This is my home. This is where I want to be." When nobody else was saying, "This is where I want to be," and re-signing and then getting traded.
He had no intentions of ever going anywhere else. He would have played 14, 15 years in Toronto and retired up there.
It was heartbreaking. Again, however, I get it. They had to do it. So he goes to San Antonio. It's not bad. It's not like he did poorly in San Antonio, but San Antonio was not the same San Antonio Spurs team that we knew. He now ends up in Chicago. I'm just going to run through here. So in 58 games this season, 35 minutes a game, 35.7 minutes a game, just over 28 points a game, just over 5 rebounds a game, 5 assists. So he's putting up 28, 5, and 5 with a steal. And I don't know. Do you care about PER 24.91? I don't know that I care about PER. However, more importantly, he's got the Bulls sitting at 39 and 23. And we questioned where the Bulls would be this season because we knew their offense would be good, but we weren't sure about their defense, right? Well, they're actually playing pretty well defensively. They're second in the East. What do you think about DeMar DeRozan and his MVP chances?
The tricky thing here is, Tom, whenever you're talking about a league MVP, you bow up like, yo, this guy is this guy. It's DeMar DeRozan, and we saw DeMar DeRozan in San Antonio. We saw DeMar DeRozan in Toronto. Nobody's really screaming about him. And it's exactly what I said to you a while ago, that it's a conversation that we have to have. This isn't something that, DeMar DeRozan is in the league MVP. Well, wait a minute, man. I think he leads all guards in scoring. That's number one. I think he leads all guards in scoring. He's had that team at the top of the Eastern Conference who've been decimated by injury, and he's held them together. And the Eastern Conference has been so much better this year than last year. And when I think about DeMar DeRozan being a free agent, I think about DeMar DeRozan being a free agent coming into the Chicago Bulls. Anybody who tells me that they had DeMar DeRozan as a potential MVP of the league, I promise you, you and I will never have a conversation because you're lying. You are absolutely lying.
So DeMar DeRozan, 4th in the league in scoring. He only trails Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and LeBron James.
He leads all guards in score.
He's 4th. I think he might be listed as a small forward right now, but yes, he's a shooting guard. I don't care what they list him as. He's a shooting
guard. Played 8 years in Toronto. He played the 2.
He plays the 2. Yeah.
So I'm not listening to that small forward nonsense. So with all of that being said, Tone, the downside to this is he's got a guy on his team that's doing something similar to him, and that's Zach LaVine. Yep. So DeMar DeRozan's averaging 28. DeRozan's averaging 28. Zach LaVine is averaging 25. Now you got the other league MVP candidates. Nobody, I think Giannis is 28 and 12 and 6. Nobody in Milwaukee's doing that, right? Joel Embiid I think he leads the league in scoring.
Correct, he does.
I think he leads the league in scoring, and I think he's in the top 10 in rebounding. Joel has nobody on his team that's doing that. He just got James Harden. He was doing that before James Harden showed up. Sure. James, on the other hand, he's not in the conversation because the Lakers are trash, right? The Lakers are bad, so he's not in the conversation. So that leaves DeMar DeRozan, that leaves Joel Embiid, Giannis, himself, and I believe Chris Paul got hurt. So Ja Morant is now in the conversation. But I think that we have to talk more about him than we did, simply because how he's held that team together. And when you think about a league MVP, right? When you think about a league MVP, it's the most valuable to your team's success. The Chicago Bulls have been at the top of the Eastern Conference the entire season. And they've been at the top of the Eastern Conference the entire season primarily because of him. So it's absolutely a conversation, and he is in it.
I think what happens is he's been in the league so long, and we've never actually talked about him as an MVP candidate. That I can remember. Ever, right?
Ever.
And we look at Toronto, and people always, every time I bring up DeMar DeRozan, they're like, okay, well, he wasn't a great defender. Okay, he wasn't a great defender. I agree he wasn't. Although, how many people are great defenders nowadays? Anyways, that's a different conversation.
Can't say that I saw Joker's name on the all-league defensive team. So
Exactly. So he wasn't a great defender. Oh, what about what happened in the playoffs? He choked against LeBron. I always shake my head when people say that or scream. It's just because, well, listen, LeBron James went to 8 and the Heat and Cavs went to 8 straight finals. So to say that, hey, he got clamped down and didn't play well and lost, well, okay, who didn't? Everybody did. But MVP is not a playoff award.
no, it is not.
It's not a playoff award. So did he play? So I think he goes through all those years in Toronto where he's not really viewed as this superstar. He's just, hey, he's a really good player up there. Goes to San Antonio. And I'm not saying he played poorly, but just the team didn't have success. So we didn't really talk about him. So now he goes to Chicago where, hey, now people are watching. People are paying attention to Chicago. Oddly enough, Toronto's a bigger city. But anyways, different conversation for another time.
By the way.
Conversation for another time. So these in Chicago media, they're looking at him, right? And he's doing stuff, right? Like he's doing stuff that just hasn't been done that. Like I believe, I don't know if it's changed, but 8 straight games of 35 plus points and 50% shooting better from the field. Only 7 players. Let me list you the players who have done this. So obviously DeMar, LeBron, James Harden, Elgin Baylor.
Wait, stop right there. Go from the top again. One more.
So DeMar DeRozan.
Okay.
LeBron James.
League MVP.
James Harden.
League MVP.
Elgin Baylor.
Okay.
Wilt Chamberlain.
League MVP.
Kobe Bryant.
League MVP.
Michael Jordan.
League MVP. 5 of the 7 guys.
That's who hold on. Just I thought Elgin was the only one. Oh, and DeMar. All right, yeah. 5.
And DeMar.
No, DeMar.
So, we don't know if he's going to win it,
Yeah,
but we'll take DeMar off it. So 6 of the 7 guys are league MVPs.
Yeah, five of the other 6. And Elgin Baylor, let's be serious. Like he probably should have had one. But anyways, that's a conversation for another day. I'm a Laker fan. So not only is he leading a team to number 2 seed in the East, he's top 5 in scoring. He's doing things, like I said, that haven't been done, but we're still not talking about him. We have guys like Joker. We talk about him even though his team isn't doing that well. We have guys like John Morant who, well, he's never done it before, and DeMar's numbers are better. And when Ja's out of the lineup, and Ja's my second favorite player in the league right now next to Giannis, Ja's team won without him. I think, what did they go? What did you tell me before? 10-2, 10-1, 12, and it's like some crazy number without him. Who else? Well, we're not talking LeBron because his team might not even make the playoffs, not even the play-in.
Chris Paul's hurt.
Chris Paul's hurt, and probably Joel Embiid and Giannis. So I still think Joel and Giannis are the top 2 guys right now.
I think Joker's out of the conversation. I don't think he's in.
No, I think his team's not there. So even listen, technically, if you want to be strict, and I know this is not 100%, but typically it's a team that has a first round home series in the playoffs. Right now, Giannis and the Bucks are 5th. And I know a lot of that has to do with the way they started the season.
So he's out too.
We're only 1 year removed of him winning back to back. So now you got a guy who's already won 2 and his team's 5th. He might be out of it. Might be Joel and DeMar
DeRozan. Yep. Because KD is out, Chris Paul is out. So these 2 guys, when you think about most valuable to their team's success, these guys are at the top of the list. And that's what this is all about. Me and you have had this conversation, Tone, since 1975, 76. That's been 46 years. There have only been 2 guys who have won the league MVP and been on teams that have finished lower than 3. Because every MVP since then has been number 3, has been on a team that has been 3 or higher. That's it. So it's only been 2 guys. That's Russ in the 16-17 season, and that's Jabbar in the 75-76 season. Every other league MVP has been on a team that has either been the 1, 2, or the 3 seed.
And for the record, look at what those guys did in those 2 seasons, and you'll know why. Those were the exceptions to the rule. So I don't think there's going to be an exception to the rule. So I still think, I've told you this for weeks now, I think it's unless something happens to Embiid and he gets hurt, or I don't know if Harden just takes over and he starts averaging 20 a game, to end out the season for the last 20 games. Nah. I think it's Joel's to lose.
Mm-hmm.
But if DeMar doesn't finish second or third max,
he's definitely a top 3 candidate. No question about it.
I think we're someone did something wrong there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and let me ask everyone in the comments as well. Is DeMar DeRozan your league MVP?
No, I think it's Joel Embiid. I think it's Joel Embiid.
I can't go against what I've been saying, so I'm with you. I think it's Joel, but I think DeMar should be second. I think
it's not Joel Embiid like how you tell me, Tone, about Matt Stafford and Jared Goff like this. No, it's Joel Embiid and it's DeMar DeRozan like this. So,
all right, you know what it's time for?
Mail drop.
Question number 1. We're sticking in the NBA.
Uh-oh.
We didn't mention his name in the MVP conversation. Although if you look at just stats, he probably should be. Is Luka Doncic the future of the NBA?
If I think Giannis is the future of the NBA, I have to say that Luka is the future of the NBA because of how he brings what he brings to the game. Jason Kidd challenged him. Before the season started, Tom, not before the season started, when the season started, you and I had this conversation. My big gripe on him was he was doughy. He was out of shape. He just didn't look sharp. Jason Kidd challenged him. You got to get in better shape. You have to be more of a playmaker. You got to be more a distributor. You got to be more of a team guy. He did that. Not only did he do that, he got snubbed as an all-star starter. As an all-star starter, he got snubbed and went 29-9 since then. Now, we're not really talking too much about Dallas, and the reason why we're not talking too much about Dallas is because they've done a terrible job at building around him. They have, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You have an A player in Dallas. You don't have an A player. You don't have a B player having an A year. You have an A player in Dallas, and you got a franchise player. Luka is not a cornerstone. Luka is not a guy who is a piece. No, Luka is the guy that you go, I'm building my unit around him. I think Dallas has done a less than average job of doing that. But as a player, he is definitely one of the faces of the league.
After Luka, who does Dallas have? Luka leads his team in points, 27.6, rebounds, 9.2, assists, 8.9. Like,
who's their second best guy is Brunson, because it's not Hardaway, right? It's not Finney Smith. They already traded away KP. So it's essentially, it kind of reminds me of what they did in Cleveland, where, we're just going to keep getting back to the playoffs and we'll just see what happens. And then this guy goes off in the playoffs like he does. And then there's no success. And that's how he's viewed. I think that Dallas needs to do a better job at building around him. His numbers will suffer if they were to get him better players. That's what you talked about to me a little while ago, Tone. That's what sacrifice is. I got better players. So that means that I don't have to do nearly as much.
So let me answer the question quickly, and then I'll explain. Is Luka Doncic the future of the NBA, the face of the NBA? The answer is no. The answer is no. And here's why the answer is no. If I think back, I think of the NBA in the 60s, and I think Wilt and Russell.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s, I think Jabbar and others, but just when I think of who the face of the franchise. In the 80s, we know Magic and Larry saved the NBA. No one was watching the NBA. In the 90s, it was Mike.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 2000s, it was Shaq, Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying these guys are the greatest players of each of those, although I think they are too. But, because people say, oh, what about Tim Duncan? Tim Duncan wasn't the face of the franchise. No one, he went out and won, but he wasn't the face. So it was Shaq and Kobe. 2010s, LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of put a face almost to every decade of that one or two players. Here's what I love about the NBA right now in the 2020s. Look how many mid 20-year-olds, either superstars already or budding superstars we have. Luca, Ja, Embiid, Giannis, Tatum, Trey. I'm missing Booker. I know I'm missing a ton of guys.
Joker.
But the list, Joker, there's a list of like 15 guys who
Donovan Mitchell.
I don't think any one of them is light years ahead of the other. Now we can make lists and say, here's my top 5, here's my top 3, and we'll rank them. But like, is there one player who's like LeBron? He's just the best player in the game, undoubtedly. No. Is there a player like in the 90s that, look, Jordan's just the best player?
Right.
No. Bird and Magic. Look, there's other great players, but right now, I don't think that there's one who stands. I think there's more parity, I guess, when it comes to superstars. So this isn't saying Luka's not great. It's just that, is he light years ahead of anybody else? So that's why I just say he'll be, maybe the answer is, yeah, he's one of the faces of the future NBA, right? One of them, because I think it's going to be like 4 or 5, people that we look at.
Let me ask you this, Tone. Would the NBA make a Euro the face of the league?
Okay, you're gonna get me in trouble with this answer. Because I would say, if I'm looking strictly demographics, and I'm just talking numbers as a take your own ideologies out of this, which I try to do. 70+% of the NBA fans are white. The guys who pay for tickets, buy merchandise, do that stuff. So why not? You got to market. You got to market to your audience, right? I'm taking. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just, if you just look at demographics, that's from a strictly business standpoint. And you know me, I'm in a lot of business meetings.
Yes, sir.
And we have to have these conversations. Yeah. We have to have. There's reasons why when I'm in Texas, right, the sign outside of the business says, "Sí, habla español," because you got to know who your customers are. There's a reason why if you go to the Danforth in Toronto, now not as much today as it used to be, but however, you don't know this is going to be news to you. That's Greektown. All the signs are in Greek, because guess what? That's a lot of the people. That's what they're going for. They're going for that experience. You go to Little Italy, you go any of those types of. You have to know who your audience is. So yeah, I think they would. Yeah. But here's the problem. And this is the other reason why I got to say, Luka, no. Your team has to be good. You have to win. I don't see them winning a chip. Like he might be like Dirk. Like, think about it. Dirk would have been another great player, but he only won 1 chip and went on like a historic run to do it. If you're not going to be a multiple champion, so that's my other part. When you look at the NBA today, who do you see is going to win? Do you see any team? Forget three-peat. Do you have anybody who might back-to-back the Bucks? Maybe, right? Maybe this year the Bucks could go back-to-back.
I think that they are going to be in the NBA Finals, but when you're talking about going on a Kobe Shaq run, going on a Jordan run where, 6 titles in 8 years.
Heck, even San Antonio going on a 4-8.
Right. Stuff like that. I don't see any team like that. And the reason why we don't see any teams like that right now, Tone, is because the player movement. Don't forget, Jordan played with the Bulls for as long as he did. Kobe and Shaq were together 8 years, right? So I don't really see teams that stay together that long. There's this small window where teams stay together.
No, 4 or 5 years, right?
That's it.
4-year window, maybe.
And then that's it. I mean, what Golden State did, that's an anomaly. I don't think that's something, you would say.
Even Golden State, if you think about it, their core team that they had of Steph, Draymond, and Clay went to the finals twice. Won one, lost one. Then they got Kevin Durant. And then they went to three straight finals, won 2, lost 1.
Yep.
And then the team was done. So as much as we'll say, okay, in 5 years they won 3, I'm sorry, those are 2 very different teams.
Not the same team.
The Draymond Clay Steph team versus the Draymond Clay Steph KD. Those are two different teams. I get it. It was, but if you look at the supporting cast, right, it was different.
Right. Absolutely.
But still, that's still what 3 and 5 years. That's amazing. But I mean,
going to the NBA Finals 5 straight years and winning it 3 times. That's pretty impressive.
That's incredible.
That's really
when are we going to see that again? Do you think another superstar is going to go to a 70-win team and deal with what KD had to deal with? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do it. So that's what I'm saying is that, it's going to be tough for Luka to be that face, because I don't think Dallas, I'm looking at their roster now. I unless they shake.
They're not paying anybody, Tone. That's the problem. Not only are they not paying anybody, they're scouting. When have they, with the exception of Luca, drafting Luca, when have they hit?
They didn't draft Luca.
Well, they traded for it. They drafted Trey, and then they traded.
They still didn't even.
Right. So I just think that they're doing a terrible job with him, man. I just do.
Yeah. So that's my thing. That's why I think there's too many other people competing. I don't think he's gonna win enough chips to be the face. Like again, when I go back to Magic and Bird, what made that rivalry great was one, it started in college. Two, both guys won rings, won MVPs, right? Throughout those years, they were also on the top two teams. Dallas right now, sits at 5?
5. Which last year they was at 6. The year before that they were at 5. So they're a middle of the road team. And when you're talking about being the face of the league, of all the things that you do, how great of a player you are, the reason why Jordan was the face of the league, as good as the player he was, Bulls were winning. The reason why Kobe and Shaq were the face of the league because the Lakers were winning. The reason why LeBron James was the face of the league for all of those years because he was winning and people wanted to see him lose. That's very important. Luka, as good as a player as he is, to see this team be middle of the road, it's going to be difficult.
Let me put it into perspective. The first 4 or 5 years of Jordan's career, he was still the best player in the game, but he wasn't getting the, oh my God, he's the face of the franchise in the 80s because
nobody cared. So
because they weren't winning.
Nobody cared.
LeBron, okay, he went to the finals in 07, but would you have said LeBron was clear cut the face of the league? No, it was Kobe. It was other, heck, I think even KG might have been a bigger star at one point. But why? Well, because the Cavs weren't winning. Right? It takes that once he, even like I said, that 07 and then he doesn't make the finals again. No, once that kind of 11, 12, 13, 14, when he goes on 8 straight finals, oh, now we're like, oh yeah, okay. He's the guy. He's the face.
Or maybe 2 or 3 straight. We don't even have to go for
you're right. When Miami goes to maybe that third one,
right?
You're like, okay, he's the guy.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. So Luka, you can be the best player and not the face of the league just because, right? Is anyone saying Luka's the best player right now?
I'm not.
But statistically, man.
Yeah.
But your team has to win. So a long time on that question. I hope that gives you your answer. All right, here we go. Oh, we're going back to running backs. Are running backs undervalued / underappreciated now in the NFL?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is because the offense has changed. It's a throwing league. So, in fact, not only are they not undervalued, they're overvalued. Well, what do you mean they're overvalued? Tone, you say this to me all the time about the exception. So for every Derrick Henry, right, every Jonathan Taylor, you got middle of the road, third down backs who get overpaid, who aren't going to be able to hold up. And they're only good for 2 years, 3 years, as opposed to you building it around your quarterback and you building it around a high octane throwing offense. A guy like Derrick Henry, a guy like Jonathan Taylor, that's the exception to the rule right there. So you don't see running backs getting paid 5 years, 8 years like they did years ago. And the reason why is because they don't hold up. Add that to the fact that the offense has changed so much that it's now a throwing league. So I don't think that they're undervalued.
So I'm gonna say this because you're right. I think they do get some big paydays. I will say that running backs are accurately valued and accurately appreciated. I'll say that because I don't think we talk about them enough, but I think they do. They're still getting their paydays. But I will say this. I think the running game is underappreciated and undervalued. And what I mean by that is I think the backs themselves, I think we look at them and say, wow, they're great. They get paid, like I said. But their careers are short. But I think the position is still very important. If you look at all the best teams in the NFL, with some exceptions, but overall, the best teams throughout the years, they all have a running game. All the best quarterbacks, look at all the best quarterbacks who typically have the best, most yards, most completion percentages, those types of, what do they have? They have a good running game that allows them to create play action. Play action is still the best way to get your quarterback a nice clean pocket and an opportunity to find a receiver and throw it. So I think the player itself, maybe not undervalued or underappreciated, but I think the running game itself is. We never talk about the running game. We look at the Rams and we say, well, look, the Rams won a Super Bowl without a running game. And I say this, well, until Cam Akers came back, if you look at the end of the season, Matt Stafford didn't look as great. Just the threat of the run. Cooper Kupp, who runs a 3-yard slant, that I know it's a throw. That's a run. That's their equivalent, like the West Coast offense you're familiar with in San Francisco. A lot of those short passing just kind of took over for a run. I look at Aaron Rodgers. He's got a great running game, sets up his play action. Like, just look at the games where those types of things, all those quarterbacks. So I think we forget how important the running game is. The Bengals got into the Super Bowl by beating the Chiefs. What was the most important part of that game late in that game, like overtime?
Joe Mixon,
right? Running the ball, because that when they're tired, when they're, they need to stop. Well, you throw that back right up the middle, right? And because people always ask me, like, why you run a halfback dive 20 times a game for 1 yard, negative 1 yard, 1 yard? I say, one, because you need to have the threat of a run. And two, the linemen get tired. So in the fourth quarter, that 1 yard halfback dive turns into a 10-yard first down. And the clock, as my guy Chris Berman used to say, tick, 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 tick. And that's what I think we undervalue how important a running game is. Because I'll tell you this, if you have a solid running game and defense, still win in this league.
And I also think too, Tone, I also think that the running back has been somewhat of a dinosaur. What I mean when I say that, Tone, is guys like Walter Payton, like the workhorse back, the guy who's going to run for you for 8-10 years. That dude is gone.
Yeah, that's gone. Yeah,
that guy is gone. And the reason why people have questions like this is because that guy is gone. We haven't seen that guy anymore. So now you get guys rotating in and out of the lineup, in and out of teams, and we've gone to the 2-back system. Now that we've gone to the 2-back system, the running back isn't valued nearly as much.
Yeah, I agree. All right, last question. This has nothing to do with sports. And this comes from one of our female viewers. So thank you. I picked the question and I laughed, and then I was like, oh, no, I'm going to change it. And I'm like, no. And then I went back and forth on this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I don't know. Again, this episode might be getting me in trouble. How do I find a good man that will treat me right?
How do you find a good man that'll treat you right? Well, the first thing that one of the things when I think about guys, contrary to popular belief, we're not as complex as females may think that we are. We're
simple.
Yeah, we're not as complex as females think that we are. Find a guy. How do you find a guy? By understanding what guys need and understanding what they want, and catering to an ego. Catering to an ego is very important. Being able to cook, that's very important. Presenting yourself in a respectable way, right? That's also important. Being smart, because as fine as you can be, Tone, you and I both have had this conversation. You can see a woman who looks like a dime in her face. She is absolutely stunning. The minute she opened her mouth, it looked like somebody hit her in the face with a frying pan. You're like, oh my God. So being smart is very important. Being interesting. Things like that are very important, as opposed to, you just shutting up and doing everything that a man says. No, that's not something that's going to get you to where you need to go with a guy. So
yeah, that'll get you. Look, doing all that will get you a man, but one that'll treat you right. He probably won't treat you right if you just succumb or like that. You do need to challenge a little bit. So I'll say this. My best answer that I can come up with is set your level of expectations accordingly. So here's what I mean. And I hear this a lot, right? I want a guy that's over 6 foot tall, who makes 6 figures, who drives a nice car, who has a big house, who's going to take care of me. Well, what do you bring to the table? Do you have a high school degree? No. Do you have a job? I work at the Piggly Wiggly. I make minimum wage. All right. Do you have a car? No. Do you have a house? No. So you don't have any of those things, and you just want someone who has all those things. Here's the other part. It depends how old you are. Like if you're 22 and you're expecting a guy who is going to be fit, have six-pack abs, make six figures, have his own house, where does he get the time, first of all, to do all this stuff? So it's just like set that level, that bar of expectations. Steve Harvey, I gotta shout him out because he said this. It was really funny. He goes, "You want someone to treat you right? You want a man to be there with you every single day and treat you right? Find an ugly man. He'll appreciate you like nobody's business." So I'm not suggesting do that. However, I say set your level of expectations. Understand who you are and what you bring to the table, and also understand what you want to do. So there's a couple of different levels, right? There's guys that are done and they're made, and you're going to have to bring a certain level of made to that relationship, because if they're already up here, well, why they're going to look for someone down here? They're not. They want someone on their level. Or you can be, hey, I'm middle of the road. I'm going to find someone who's middle of the road, a little bit above. Or, hey, I'm going to take a project. There's nothing wrong with the project. There's nothing. I know plenty of very happy women right now who found their man maybe at their lowest and said, "What do you want?" And he was like, "This is what I want to do. These are my dreams. These are my aspirations." And was like, "I'm going to help you." Because I listen, this is not cliche to say. Behind every successful man is a smart, strong, incredible woman. And so you can be, or hey, for every successful woman, I don't know that there's a man, but maybe you're the one that's going to be. This is 2022. Maybe you're going to be the success. Yeah. I don't know who's asking this question other than she said, "I'm a female and that's what I'm looking for." Maybe you're the success, and what you need is a man to be there for you. And maybe you need a man to cook and clean and be at home while you go out and put in work. That's okay. That's okay.
Not ridiculous.
So it's not ridiculous in this day and age. It's not, we talk about the 50s, Bill
not
Russell.
Ridiculous.
It's not those days where you're sitting at home and, Mrs. Cleaver cleaning the table, waiting for, well, I don't even remember Mr. Cleaver's name right now.
Mr. Haskell, Buddy Haskell, and those.
Hey,
leave it to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver. Like, it's not like that anymore. So I guess in one sentence, if I had to answer, how do I find a good man to treat me right? Set your level of expectations to what you can provide. One line. How do you answer that question in one line?
How do you answer that question in one line?
How would you summarize what you said?
Be who you are. That's how you find a man. Be who you are, and you'll attract what you are.
That's a good one. All right. Well, that's it. I love the questions, even though I struggled through that last one. We are going to be back on Friday. Woo! I put a question out and I said, other than offense scoring, what does Kevin Durant do great? And it blew up. On Friday, we're going to ask the question, is he really one of the greatest scorers? But until then,
take it light, but take it.